Good morning, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Dr. Kyle Rector, Deputy Director, Office of AI, Directorate of Digital Innovation, CIA, and Chip Usher, Senior Director for Intelligence Special Competitive Studies Project. Now, please welcome INSA President Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg.
Good morning and welcome to our very first Coffee and Conversation of the calendar year. This morning, we are pleased to host two of our community's top leaders for the second in our three-part series of Data and Quantum, sponsored by Microsoft. Before we begin, just a couple housekeeping notes. If you have questions, and we know you do because people have submitted them beforehand and we'll be taking them live from our attendees, please use the question box on the right side of your screen. This morning, we have over 800 registrants to enjoy the conversation. We're pleased to welcome members of the press to the call, and the recording will be available later this week. And finally, I would like to thank our host sponsor, Microsoft, for their support of the program. We could not deliver this kind of crucial thought leadership without the support of our sponsor partners. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Kristen Summers, Operating Unit CTO for Microsoft. Kristen, over to you to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, INSA, for holding this morning's discussion. I'm so excited to introduce this session. AI is near to my heart and to Microsoft's, and we're really focused on bringing the power of AI, especially generative AI, to the government. In fact, we just a couple of days ago announced the availability of Azure OpenAI with the generative models that underlie ChatGPT in our secure government cloud at the unclassified level. And we're looking forward to offering that along with our broader suite of AI offerings on our AI platform to national security customers in a classified environment as well in the future. We see such tremendous value for this community in the current generation of AI, from advances in computer vision through making sense of vast quantities of reporting, assisting with analytic processes and interpretations, and so much more. So it's truly an honor to introduce this timely conversation. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. Dr. Kyle Rector is the Deputy Director of the Office of AI within CIA's Directorate of Digital Innovation. He began his intelligence career in 2000 and has served in a variety of roles throughout the CIA and the IC, including with ODNI, DIA, and NGA. Prior to joining the IC, he held positions associated with imagery, geospatial analysis, research, cartography, and teaching at the National Geographic Society and the University of Tennessee. Our second speaker, Chip Usher, is the Senior Director for Intelligence at the Special Competitive Studies Project. Previously, Chip served for more than 3 decades at the CIA, where he held a variety of executive positions. He is a former member of the Senior Intelligence Service and has expertise on East Asia, the Near East, and Eurasia. Please join me in welcoming Kyle Rector and Chip Usher.
Thank you, Kristen. So I wanted to kick off things with just a little bit of background, and I'm going to start with Chip first, and would love to just get some information about the origination of the Strategic Competitive Studies Project. And we talked in the green room a little bit about how we're going to start off trying not to use acronyms. So Chip, that is my challenge to you in this first question.
With an organization entitled the Special Competitive Studies Project, it's a mouthful, so you'll hear me slip into SCSP from time to time, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne, for hosting this, and thank you, INSA. Having recently retired from CIA, I have found INSA to be a wonderful institution that really brings together the community around important issues like generative AI. So thanks for hosting this event. I'm happy to be here with Kyle. A bit of background on the Special Competitive Studies Project. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the principle that what will decide the fate of nations in the decade ahead and beyond really has to do with innovation power. So our predecessor organization, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, was a congressionally mandated national commission that studied AI and the competitive landscape that the United States was finding itself. That commission was co-led by Dr. Eric Schmidt and by former Deputy Secretary of Defense Bob Work. And that had to define lifespan. And once it ended, Dr. Schmidt decided he liked operating in this space and supporting the U.S. national security architecture. So he created SCSP. And we now look at a whole range of critical emerging technologies, not just limited to AI, but with an eye towards providing ideas and recommendations for how the US government, and indeed our entire society, can motivate itself to stay ahead or gain advantage in these critical areas. So AI remains central to our mission and our focus area, and we recently wrote a report, the Generative AI, the Future of Innovation Power, which we'll make available on the chat for anybody interested in reading it. So very happy to be here and talk about this one critical technology.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. So Kyle, over to you. I know that the Office of Artificial Intelligence is fairly new compared to other offices there at the CIA. Can you tell me a little bit about the origination of that office and how things are going?
Love to. Needless to say, AI is new. AI is not new to CIA, needless to say. It's been done for a number of years, but the Office of AI is new. And so several years ago, the senior leadership here at the agency made a decision that while there was a lot of good AI occurring in various kind of bits and pieces and parts of the agency, they wanted there to be kind of more of a whole of agency approach to really kind of grow and mature it. And so to achieve that, they recognized that they felt that there was a need to create an executive agent to kind of really oversee AI throughout the agency. It didn't matter which directorate or mission center it might be occurring in. And so they created the Office of Artificial Intelligence to do that. We've been around for about 2 years, and needless to say, my boss, Lakshmi Raman, is not only serving as the sort of the AI director for the Office of AI, but given changes that have been underway in terms of with recent Intelligence Authorization Acts and the OMB memos, OMB meaning Office of Management and Budget, and needless to say, executive orders from the White House, there's been a call to create a chief AI officer for various government entities. And so she also serves in that role as well. So in our organization, we provide strategic kind of direction for how AI is going to kind of grow and mature at CIA. And needless to say, we don't have a lot of in-house or in-office sort of resources to actually implement that. Instead, we work closely with all the various partner directorates and mission centers, and they've been fantastic over the last couple of years as we've been trying to move forward in this space.
Well, that is very encouraging to hear. I think we lost. There's Chip. Chip's back. Great. Chip, I just wanted to dive in a little bit about some of the threats, and one of them is disinformation with the rise of generative AI. What strategies do you think the IC should employ to detect and discern these threats that we're facing? Chip, I think you are on mute. If you will hit that little green mic, it's red now, but it should be green when you hit it, or maybe.
How about now? Sorry about
somebody
that.
Muted you. So anyway, okay, here we go.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
All right, sorry about that. We're having a little technical difficulty on this end. Yeah, generative AI, like any critical new technology, has both positive implications and negative implications for the United States. And one of the unfortunate realities with Gen AI is it's democratizing the ability to create content. So what was perhaps the preserve of large companies, high-end technologists to create avatars or realistic looking video and realistic sounding audio, this is now going to become available to more and more people. In fact, you can download an app on your phone and do some crazy things just at an individual level that weren't possible a year ago. So bad guys, adversaries, are definitely going to take advantage of this, and we're seeing evidence that they already are. Just in the last 24 hours, I think we've seen news reports of how there have been some malicious users out there putting fake content related to Taylor Swift, for example. And just yesterday, I was seeing a report that the former leader of Pakistan, who's now in jail, but still looking to run for office, his team put out some fake video content where the video looks and sounds like the former Pakistani leader. So it's out there and it's happening, and we are definitely going to be in an arms race between disinformation purveyors and defenders. The news isn't all bad, however. Generative AI and machine learning tools do offer some new tools and new capabilities to the defenders. I take the example in Taiwan. There's an organization called Taiwan AI Labs, led by a friend of ours, Dr. Ethan Tu, that are doing some fantastic work in using AI to detect, characterize, and enable the Taiwanese government to take action to defend against malicious disinformation campaigns that are appearing on social media websites targeting, in the most recent example, the just completed Taiwanese election. So defenders now are also equipped to move at speed to detect when these patterns of misinformation and disinformation occur, to spot what are fake videos or fake images or fake audio files. So the arms race is on, all is not lost, and artificial intelligence is going to help defenders as well as the malicious actors.
Well, it's refreshing to hear there is a good side to all of this. But along the vein of not so good, Kyle, with the rise of deep fakes and synthetic media, how is the CIA addressing the challenges of verifying the authenticity of data used in AI algorithms?
Well, I guess I would start by saying that, needless to say, being concerned about disinformation and kind of bad information is something that the agency has been concerned with for decades, ever since its beginning. So this is not necessarily kind of a new concern for us. I mean, needless to say, with the rise of generative AI, it really does magnify the threat for disinformation. We certainly recognize that. And it makes it easier for a whole host of actors to kind of be able to put out disinformation in ways that they weren't before. One of the things that we do recognize is that it's very difficult for the agency, or really for anyone, to kind of fully verify the authenticity of data in AI algorithms, except in kind of extremely specific cases that are within controlled kind of environments. So one of the things is that, based upon that, I guess we would say that we think that everyone needs to always be kind of questioning and kind of be kind of trying to understand the potential concern that there could be disinformation. Based upon that, we recognize too that folks tend to have overconfidence in their ability to, in fact, be able to recognize misinformation. And in fact, the research tends to show that we are very, very, very poor at kind of being able to make those kind of detections and understandings. So needless to say, we think that writ large, the country needs to be concerned with this, but that's not something in terms of for the larger country that is really kind of our mission specifically, but we do hope that the country as a whole is kind of aware and kind of working on that. For us at CIA, needless to say, given that we think it's difficult, if not impossible at times, to fully track the authenticity of data, we instead believe that you should probably and primarily focus on kind of looking at the outputs of models. So that's been really the focus for us in recent months and years, and we've been kind of undertaking a number of efforts to kind of ensure that the outputs kind of are accurate and as such. And so with that, we also understand that LLMs and generative AI are by their nature probabilistic. And so the funny thing is that while even if they were built on good data, they can still generate bad results as well. So we need to be concerned from that standpoint. So we definitely are undertaking efforts to kind of look at the judgment of the output of data, or the output of the results from the models.
So I'm curious, CISA had a campaign, if you see something, say something, right, to just educate the American public. Whose responsibility is it to campaign that out to folks across the country as sort of a warning about questioning the calls, the emails, the information that is coming their way digitally?
Is that a question for me?
It's for either of you.
Okay. Chip?
Happy to take a run at it. Here at SCSP, sorry to use the acronym, we see this as a critical gap that the U.S. government needs to address, because the nature of the threat, as you mentioned at the outset here, is growing. CISA is doing great work. DHS, Department of State, the intelligence community in recent years stood up the Foreign Malign Influence Center. They're all doing terrific work, but the problem is integration. There are a lot of parts of the U.S. government that are educating the public, working with companies that are social media platforms or others to have them do responsible governance of what's appearing on their platforms. Foreign Malign Influence Center does good studies that look at how foreign adversaries are seeking to influence our politics, our society, our national debate. But there's really no action center, right? What I think the country needs to consider is, do we need some sort of fusion center that would be bringing in all the surveillance capabilities of the IC or other departments and agencies, and enabling action when we see what is obviously foreign malign influence activity underway. Very politically sensitive issue because not all disinformation and misinformation is foreign in origin. Some of it happens here, and a lot of that is legitimate public political debate. So there needs to be leadership that would help defend the country against truly bad foreign malign influence, but not in a way that would affect our civil liberties. But there needs to be some more considered action because the problem is growing.
Right. Well, it sounds like we're on the cusp of that collaborative opportunity, and hopefully we'll move forward with that. So no conversation about AI could go without talking about China. And so this is for both of you all, but want to get your thoughts on how the rapid development of generative AI impacts the global competition between the United States and the PRC, sorry, People's Republic of China.
Sure. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, Chip, please.
So we talked a little bit about this in our generative AI report. Our status report on the state of AI between the United States and China is that the United States maintains a slight advantage. China is not inactive in this space, but the most advanced technologies and the most dynamic companies working on AI are in the United States and our Western allies. But it's not a static situation. The Chinese government has already gotten out front and iterated a set of governance policies that will have established the parameters for how their companies and how their public institutions will be using AI, definitely with an eye towards preserving the power of the party. So they're already in front in terms of government policy, and they're devoting tremendous resources to equipping select portions of their economy, particularly kind of government-led, government-focused industries dedicated to supporting the People's Liberation Army and their national security infrastructure, devoting tremendous resources to enabling them to be able to use in a limited way, not in an open, democratized fashion as US companies are allowed and enabled to do, but they're encouraging them to use it. And the stakes are high. I mean, I think some estimates put the amount that generative AI will infuse into the world's economy at something like $4.4 trillion over the next several years. And they want to be in a lead position. So they are definitely active, and this isn't an area that the U.S. can be complacent on.
Needless to say, I certainly concur with what Chip just mentioned. I mean, I would also go back to what the DNI just said at her last annual threat briefing to Congress, which is that she pointed out that critical as strategic competition with China and Russia intensifies, in particular whether the rise of authoritarianism can be checked and reversed. Bottom line is this, she basically was indicating how well we stay out ahead and manage this competition will be fundamental to our success in navigating everything else we do. And in particular, given what Chip was mentioning earlier, one of the main concerns we have is that China is oftentimes planning, it appears to be planning and using coordinated whole of government tools to demonstrate strength and compel neighbors to acquiesce to its preferences. And that's been true previously with other kind of ways of doing work, but it's also certainly true in the AI space as well.
So this question is more internal to CIA and related to collaboration, but Kyle, to what extent has generative AI influenced the collaborative aspects of intelligence analysis within the agency? And can you call out any specific instances where this technology has facilitated any sort of interdisciplinary cooperation within CIA?
Most certainly. I guess the first thing I would say is that we really are trying to grow AI across the entire enterprise, whether that be within mission or whether it be in our business operations and the like. And there are certainly kind of examples of that flourishing across all the various directorates, as well as all the various mission centers, as well as the various support offices. Needless to say, that work has happened in large part because we've taken our AI specialists and we've tended to forward deploy them out into various mission centers and directorates so that they can partner with the various kind of subject matter experts, whether they be in the mission space or whether they be in the business operations space, to kind of figure out when and how to use AI. We've also been trying to kind of do it across the whole range of work, whether it be the more classified work as well as our open source work. And in particular, on the open source front, Randy Nixon and those over in the open source enterprise have really taken a major lead for the agency in kind of leveraging large language models, generative AI, to kind of really help support the work that they're doing. Needless to say, one of the things that is most, I think, challenging for the agency is that we live in a time of a data explosion, needless to say. And so we really have to turn to things like AI to help us sort of triage and work through the large volume of data that's coming in each and every day. And once again, the open source enterprise is really one of the best examples of where that needs to happen. And so we think that that's been an important step forward for us. We also, as part of that collaboration, are trying to do the collaboration not only within the agency, but also more broadly with our IC partners. And that's been an area where, once again, my boss is the Chief AI Officer for CIA, is working closely with the Chief AI Officers of other IC elements, as well as other parts of government, to ensure that where there's kind of good things that are happening in other places in the community, we're able to kind of draw upon those and kind of pull them into our agency and use them. Likewise, where we have kind of good kind of models and tools and capabilities that we're developing in-house or leveraging in-house, we can share those as well.
Well, the collaboration across the community is certainly an encouraging part of this challenge. So we've got quite a few folks from government tuned in this morning for the webinar. And I'm sure that, Chip, they would be curious to know what steps the IC should take to ensure that the workforce is adequately trained and prepared for the integration of these AI tools. Any words of wisdom that you can share to help those folks out?
Yeah, a couple of things. As Kyle was just talking about, I think at CIA, they're really out in front in thinking creatively about how to bring artificial intelligence down to the workforce level, right? Really kind of take it out of just the S&T and the CTO space and really try to expose larger portions of the mission to the capability. And that's exactly what the IC should be doing. And I would encourage other departments and agencies to find their own ways, because generative AI is noted at the outset of this conversation, one of those general purpose technologies that's going to transform thought work. So whether you're in collection, analysis, or budget and finance and HR work, it's probably going to permeate all of those layers, all those aspects. And so another truism that I found in my 30 years in government is it's unlikely that the IC is going to gain the workforce of the future just through recruitment alone. I mean, our attrition rate is extremely low, below 10%, which is a wonderful testament to the attractiveness of the career, but it doesn't lead to the kind of changing of the skill mix at any sort of pace that we're we're seeing is going to be required to adapt to the generative AI moment. So that leads one to think about, on-the-job training. And that probably means some, even further creative work about bringing Gen AI training to the workforce where they're located. And they may be located, in war zones, far from Washington, D.C. And the type of training they need isn't just, here, come take a 1-week course on what generative AI is. It's how can you deploy this capability in your work as a CIA personnel officer or as a CIA case officer, right? So it probably needs to be a combination of online training, training at the desktop, making tools available to IC officers that they use every day, equipped with some sort of AI tutorial capability, and a concerted effort by leadership to promote digitization, integration, and employment of AI.
So that is a great lead in to my first attendee question. And I was geeking out in the green room earlier with Kyle and Chip about how many folks we have from across the country, from universities that are tuning in this morning. So our first question is from Jack Sears from Indiana University. Go Hoosiers. He wants to know what type of skill sets will college students need to better understand and tackle the challenge we face from AI.
So at least in terms of when I interact with folks that are thinking about possibly coming to work at CIA and specifically wanting to do so in the AI space, what I would say is that the AI almost life cycle, if you will, requires a wide range of folks to be involved in the process. I mean, one of the things that folks tend to think often is that they first are looking at like the data scientists, if you will, and those sorts of folks are absolutely critical to the AI work that occurs at the agency and occurs elsewhere. But there are many other professions as well, everything from, in the case of CIA, more traditional analysts and traditional collectors to folks that are in legal and policy and so on. So what I would say is that the nature of AI is such that if you are interested in being involved in AI work, there's really a multitude of places where you can plug into that. So I think the question becomes more, do you want to be someone that's going to be involved in creating the models? Do you want to be someone that's going to be involved in trying to understand when it's appropriate, maybe to use a model for a particular use case? Do you want to be someone who's involved in helping to work through the data challenges that we have that are on the front end with AI? And there's, like I said, I can go on and on and on. Related to that, and building upon what Chip said in his prior answer, here at CIA, one of the things we're striving to do is to not only recruit folks specifically to work all from the start within the AI life cycle, but we are working as well to enable our broader workforce, regardless of where they happen to be or for what purpose they were hired, as appropriate to be involved in that activity. And that's meant that we've had to do everything from create an AI learning center here at the agency that we've also then pushed out to the broader IC. So that folks have access to training online so that they can upskill and become more capable in that area. For folks that have more specialized needs, once again, maybe such as like a data scientist or the like, who's going to be maybe helping to build models, we also routinely offer opportunities for those folks to go out and get training at major universities and institutions around the country and the like. And we also work with those external expert partners to help build specialized training that we can then push to folks regardless of whether they happen to be here in the Washington metropolitan area or elsewhere where we have ongoing activities. But getting back to your question, I mean, you can really be a variety of jobs. And I've seen folks that have come in that have been everything originally from majoring in economics or English to people that have been in computer science and so on. The trick is to be open and willing to to learning here in terms of at the agency about needs and how AI can then fit in and how you can be part of that process.
Well, it's good to hear that those of us who are more inclined to liberal arts still can have impact on the mission. So my next question is from Billy Hayes from LMI, and he wants to know how the IC is working with Silicon Valley in the AI domain to create a virtuous cycle in terms of LLMs and generative AI. And I'll put that out to either you, Kyle, or Chip.
I'll take a first run at it and invite Kyle to speak to CIA's experience with this. We talked to a lot of the developers of large language models, and the good news is that sort of across the board, there's a lot of enthusiasm for helping government, really helping the national security world, and they understand the potential threat from China. They understand how this could be applied for national defense, national competitiveness purposes, and they want to help. So there's a lot of contact, there's a lot of dialogue, and I think some of this is not something we can talk about publicly, but I think there's some nascent collaboration that's underway. Couple of points from industry that the IC should kind of bear in mind is, first of all, their intellectual property is, absolutely essential to their well-being, and they want to protect it, and they do so fiercely. So the weighting of their models, the algorithms that they're using, how they train their LLMs is essential to them. The IC and the U.S. government needs to find ways to, work with them to protect those assets if there's going to be collaboration going forward. Companies do note that there are a variety of messages coming from Washington when it comes to generative AI, both seeking to use it, but then also seeking to prevent harm coming from it, whether it has to do with privacy issues, fake content, all the things that we've already talked about. So for companies looking to work with the intelligence community, they need some clarity about the use cases that the IC envisions. The intelligence community does all sorts of things, from kind of understanding the world, being at the cutting edge of understanding new and emerging technologies, to conducting a war on terror and assisting our allies in Ukraine and resisting Russia's invasion, et cetera. And some of those are kinetic in nature, right? Almost military. So these companies understand if they're going to collaborate with the IC, that they're going to remain in bounds with the other messages and guidelines and guidance coming from Washington.
So here's an interesting question, and I'll ask Kyle this one. Kevin Kottman at TransUnion says, the U.S. government is utilizing AI more offensively for intel gathering. Or are they using it more defensively for more of like an automated, repeatable type process and task? So offense versus defense. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, as I think I've already mentioned, at least in sort of several different ways, at CIA, the goal is to really try to make sure that AI, where it's appropriate to use, is used anywhere across the enterprise as it is needed. And that can certainly be for offensive purposes. It can certainly be for defensive purposes. It can certainly be used for data triage purposes. And all those instances are true, once again, whether we're talking about mission, in which case I'm thinking about going out and collecting intelligence to understand what our foreign adversaries are doing, and also then doing analysis on that collection. But it's also true for business operations, which is, protecting our facilities here and globally, and doing work that kind of relates to processing of data that relates to our personnel and the like. So we understand that there's a need for AI to kind of really help us speed up work across the board. And as an example, getting back to private industry, we are trying to do that through engagement with a whole host of firms, and we've been engaging with a broad spectrum, both at the sort of the more kind of well-known level, as well as some of the smaller, newer firms as well. But the bottom line is that we're really trying to use AI across the board, regardless of where it happens to kind of fit into our organizational situation.
So that's a great way to set up this question from Jeff Hughes at BAE Systems. Along the lines of collaborating with industry, are there any specific areas that industry can help address, any opportunities out there that they need to be aware of, where maybe there's a gap or an opportunity that they could help fill?
Well, what I would say first, at least in terms of for CIA on that front, is that our Office of Procurement and our Office of Acquisition Management within the Directorate of Digital Innovation have been doing reach out and providing kind of notices for all sorts of areas in which we are seeking AI assistance. In fact, just recently, we completed the second week of a 2-week, what was known as a reverse industry event, where we had a whole host, a large number of partners, well over 100 partners from elsewhere across the government that came in to talk about the various tools and capabilities they're developing. And they related once again to, I mean, a huge broad spectrum of things. So as an example, we had everything from folks coming in talking about ways in which AI could be potentially a benefit for us in terms of doing acquisition, in terms of streamlining that, or kind of helping out with, once again, data triage, helping us think about ways in which technically, given some of the challenges that we face within our more operational environments, ways in which AI can help in those spaces. So what I would say is that if folks are interested in learning more about the specific kind of needs on that front, I would turn them to go and talk to the offices of procurement at CIA, and they can and they should be able to help there, because we work actively through them to make sure that those needs are kind of more kind of broadly kind of made known.
That's super helpful. So we talked a little bit about AI for good, AI for bad. Here's a question from a PhD student at the University of South Florida, Rebecca Soul, and she wants to know what ethical considerations are being taken into account when developing and deploying AI in intelligence operations. Chip, maybe start with you on that one.
Sure, that's a terrific question, Rebecca. Thanks for posing it. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we now have generative AI doesn't obviate the IC's obligations to adhere to U.S. law and existing guidelines. So these tools need to be created with those guidelines in mind, kind of from the get-go. Also, security, kind of similar fashion. You need to build those in. So let's take an example of counter disinformation and dealing with former line influence. The converse of that is covert action, covert influence. The U.S. has long held that, we will conduct covert action, but we're not going to be in the business of propagating propaganda. So, well, technically, generative AI could enable an IC entity to create all sorts of propaganda. There are very good reasons why we wouldn't want to enable that. Because it's inconsistent with American values and existing guidelines. So, these rules need to be kind of baked in from the outset, and there's, need to account for the capability, but, that it isn't a time to just throw our ethics and our values out the window.
So, go ahead, Kyle, over to you.
No, I was just going to say that, at least from my perspective, in terms of a large portion of my career has been involved in analytic integrity and standards. And so it's making sure that analysis and related collection is rigorous, that it's objective, it's accurate, it's timely, and it's also done within an ethical and kind of privacy compliant manner. Needless to say, that work over all those years, has driven me to have that same kind of focus that AI work needs to be much the same. And so in terms of at the IC level, there's been the creation of the IC's AI ethical framework. And I think it very much kind of espouses the things that we as Americans would expect of our government, no matter where they're doing business. And so we are trying to make sure that those standards within the framework are being implemented across CIA. And once again, we are working with our partners across the community to make sure that it happens more broadly throughout the entire IC.
So here's a question from Adam Blocker, and very late breaking. I have not read the newspaper this morning yet, Adam. I'm guilty, but he says the Wall Street Journal featured an article this morning about Russian disinformation campaigns in Africa, and we did talk a little bit about Russia, but more specifically, these campaigns intended to reduce U.S. influence. Is there anything you all can say unclassified about the U.S.'s efforts to combat these efforts? Sorry. Over to either of you.
I'll turn to you first.
Okay. So I retired a year ago, so I don't have current information about what the United States government is or isn't doing. I am aware that Russia has for quite some time been actively engaged in a disinformation campaign in order to expand its influence in Africa. Look, for the IC, the mission priorities sort of remain as they are. And that is to first understand what the Russians are doing and how they're doing it. What platforms are they using? What payloads, what messages are they delivering? How is it impacting not only public opinion, but perhaps elite opinion in several of these companies? And the IC should be availing itself of the very latest tools, to include artificial intelligence, to analyze and assess that and track that sort of thing. Then it's over to the policymakers to address this either diplomatically, providing assistance to friendly governments, or taking some other actions. But the IC mission, I think, remains sort of as it was. The extent of the problem, I think, every month we see new reports of what Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Hamas are doing in the disinformation space. And so I think it deserves greater attention and resources from the IC in general.
And so building upon what Chip just mentioned there, and I fully concur with what he said, what I would say is that we, as I mentioned earlier, we recognize that with the rise of generative AI, that there really is an increased ability and increased ease to produce disinformation. And so it's something that the agency as a whole, regardless of what sort of aspect of its mission it might have, is striving to make sure that it's kind of considering that and focusing its work to try to understand when that disinformation is happening, whether it be due to AI or other forms that were around for years. So in that sense, it's the AI work is building upon the existing focus that the agency has had for decades.
So I'm going to close with a final question from a small business CEO. And he asked, how can a small business vendor new to CIA present or demo AI solutions to the agency? So Kyle, this question is for you.
So once again, I would ask them to reach out to the Office of Procurement and Executive. If for whatever reason, that's really the best place for them to kind of touch base. And like I said, we are very sort of forward about trying to make sure that whatever use cases we have that we can share with the public, that we kind of get them out through that mechanism so that companies can see. And we really do welcome input from the whole range of firms that are out there. We're dealing from the very largest of companies in the United States on the AI front to those that are just one or two persons, because the reality is that there can really be fantastic new kind of tools, capabilities, and kind of things that we can leverage from all sorts of firms, and we're trying to do that.
Well, that's
Suzanne, if you'll permit me, I'm going to make a shameless plug. Yeah. I'm going to make a shameless plug and say that our organization is going to be hosting what we're calling the AI Expo on the 7th and 8th of May here in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Convention Center. There will be the full suite of IC agencies present there with booths, we hope. And we very much invite small businesses with their AI capabilities and their tools to exhibit at this affair. Please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about opening a booth and participating, where you will be exposed to not just the IC, but DoD and a whole suite of U.S. government customers who would be eager, I imagine, to see what your company can do.
Great. Well, I want to follow up with you on that. And it was not a shameless plug. I love ending these webinars with some sort of tangible call to action. So that certainly was checking that box. So Kyle, Chip, any closing thoughts? 45 minutes flies by, and I think I will get a copy of all these questions submitted and share with both of your offices following the webinar. I think there's some other really thought-provoking ideas.
I just thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and look forward to being able to kind of work with you in the future.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Chip?
Absolutely the same thing. I guess the final word from me is, your intelligence community, as Kyle mentioned, has thought about AI for a long time. I think the key challenge going forward is how can they integrate this capability in the ways that you talked about, Suzanne, across departments, across agencies, and deploy them in a way that's effective and improves the quality and the reach, really, of what the IC can do safely and consistent with US laws.
Well, thanks for what you both do along these efforts and for joining us this morning. Again, I mentioned earlier to both Kyle and Chip, it's a quick close, but I just wanted to also thank Microsoft for making this webinar possible, and for Kristen's introduction, and for all of you all watching online. Thanks for taking the time to join us this morning, folks from the private sector, public sector, academia, students. When the webinar ends, there'll be just a very short survey that pops up. Please take a moment to complete it. We really do go through those, and it helps us refine some of our best practices. I wanted to mention that next Thursday night, a week from tonight, we will be hosting our annual Charlie Allen Achievement Awards ceremony at the Army-Navy Country Club, where we will honor the outstanding early efforts of early to mid-career professionals. NGA's Deputy Director, Tanya Wilkerson, will be joining us as a keynote. If you have not attended the Achievement Awards, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you check out all of the 7 recipients on our website and consider attending. And then on Wednesday, February 21st, INSA will co-host a virtual panel with the Black professionals in international affairs, focused on cultivating and retaining diverse talent in national security. And then lastly, I wanted to mention on February 29th, we will be having a leadership breakfast with FBI Director Christopher Wray and McLean. Please join us for that conversation. And again, complete the survey. Have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.